AD. I'm just like, come on now.
I did hear
We're going to go hexadecimal. Generation 1 after A, or after Z.
Yeah. I saw a term for millennials could also be the echo boomers or something, because there are more millennials than there were baby boomers.
And that's one of the defining characteristics of the millennials is the birth rate has gone back up again. So X is silent generation was small, boomers were gigantic. X is as small. They say that there is one generation Xer to replace every 2 baby boomers. So it's got half the population of the baby boomers, at least in the US. I don't know if it's worldwide or not.
Yeah.
Does anybody else care about this stuff?
I do.
I'm sure Australia and England care. And then the baby boomers and X, and then the millennials are actually a larger generation than the baby boomers. So there's a 1 to 1.1 something ratio, baby boomer to millennial. So it's not a generation that you can ignore.
No.
That's one of the good things it has going for it. If nothing else.
Yeah.
At least it's going to say you have to pay attention to it.
So the millennials, it came from a YouTube video of Simon Sinek, and he talks about millennials and I guess why they're unhappy.
Okay.
And why are you sighing?
I wasn't exactly on board with everything that Simon Sinek said. But he's an Xer. He's trying to decipher what this generation was all about. So.
Yeah. Well, he starts off kind of just saying he starts off saying they were dealt a bad hand.
Yeah.
Are you on board with that?
No.
No?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
So he says that we were dealt a bad hand because we didn't ask for the trophies. That's the big thing that's always said about the millennials is we're the participation trophy generation.
Yeah. And
we're so entitled because we've been told our entire lives that we're special snowflakes and that we can do anything we want in the world. And I'm like, that's not our fault that we were raised that way. I get that.
Yeah.
But the whole thing of they were dealt a bad hand, oh, poor them.
It's like they're the victims.
Yeah, it takes all the responsibility from how we respond to that and how we grow up from that.
Yeah.
And says, oh, well, there's nothing we can do about it. The millennials are also the generation that enlisted after 9/11.
Huh.
Because Xers would have been too old by then.
Yeah.
I mean, not entirely.
Yeah.
If you were late 70s, you could have enlisted.
Yeah.
But this is the generation that the whole they were dealt a bad hand just sounds like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. And I'm like, that's crap.
Right.
We weren't dealt a bad hand.
Yeah.
The greatest generation was dealt a bad hand. That their parents fought in World War I.
Yeah.
And 20 years later, they were called to fight in World War II.
Yeah.
That's a bad hand.
The Great Depression is a bad hand.
Baby boomers were dealt a bad hand when you had to stand in gas lines in the 70s in order to fill up your car.
Yeah.
Generation Xers were dealt a bad hand because they were born in the Cold War when Russia was going to nuke us all. Mm-hmm. So, I mean...
Yeah, you could say it about every generation.
We were dealt a bad hand because we were here with Enron in the 2000s, followed immediately by 9/11.
Yeah.
I mean, we were all dealt bad hands.
Right.
And to say... just the whole characterization of them saying that they were the participation trophy generation is ridiculous to me. We're also the generation who have been in the military for the past 16 years, fighting wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, where else now? Yemen, Turkey, Russia, wherever else they want to send us. So I hate that.
I mean, if you go to the 1980 starting birth, they're the ones that made the internet. I mean, made the most money too off the internet. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's something to be said about that.
Yeah,
we've made more money than our parents.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is it's not like the millennials were the only generation ever to be raised as special snowflakes. the baby boomers were raised as special snowflakes. I mean, they were raised in a generation, they were raised at a time when American superiority was like the height.
Yeah.
We had just won a war. We kicked everybody's butt in it. We dropped a nuke on a country, and now we were racing to be the first country to go to the moon.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exceptionalism at its height. And it's like, back then you were raised that you were going to live a better life than your parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Xers might have not had as much of that because of the uncertainty of the Cold War and post-Vietnam, but there was still, I mean, even today, if the millennials are so bad for being the participation trophy, why do we still do it with the generation that, you know, with our kids?
Yeah.
Every single parent thinks that their kid's the most special kid in the world. That's not uniquely millennial. That's American.
That's parent.
That's American since World War One and World War Two.
Yeah.
And the Roaring '20s and stuff, where we are now the top of the food chain, and there's nothing that we can't do.
Yeah.
So I don't buy it that that's only millennials.
Right.
The sucky thing is, too, is you go to these college campuses where they have safe spaces, and it's the teachers that are the ones protecting them and setting up the safe spaces and everything. It's kind of like you're not going to expect to go to college and find a safe space unless somebody else there, an adult, somebody running the school, has said, oh, well, we're sorry for offending you. We'll set up these safe spaces.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Yeah.
I get in this conversation a lot. I love it.
Yeah.
I love talking about generations because right now we are approaching a time when we'll have 5 generations in the workplace. So we still have silent generation working. They're coming up on 80 years old, but they aren't retiring like they were supposed to.
Yeah.
So you've got the silent generation, which are called the silent generation. The Generation X could be called the silent generation too, but they're called the silent generation because nobody ever paid attention to them. They weren't the greatest generation, which everybody was all cheering for, and it was like, you're the greatest generation. You fought in World War II.
Yeah.
But they also weren't the baby boomers. They were like stuck in the middle. Like, I was too young to fight in World War II, but too old to qualify as a baby boomer.
Yeah. The middle child.
Yeah. And that's really what Xers are, is now that Xers are hitting 35 and 40 years old, and they're like, now it's our time to take over the business world. The millennials are like, I'm 22 years old.
Yeah.
I'm ready to be
I got
the CEO.
$2 million already.
So that's kind of the way they feel too. And I've talked to friends that are middle managers who are Xers. They're 40, 45 years old, and they're just like, what happened to our turn to run companies?
Yeah.
I've been putting in 15 years at this business. And now this new person comes in and they've been here 3 months and they're wondering why they're not promoted yet.
Yeah.
And then this baby boomer who was supposed to retire and give me their job
It's still there.
hasn't left yet.
Yeah.
So they're stuck in the middle trying to translate
Right.
between these two giant generations. So, but yeah, I'm not buying Simon Sinek's thing that a lot of his stuff is just like, so much stuff is out of our control and we can't respond to it. So he said low self-esteem. So he said this is a generation that was raised that they were special snowflakes and got participation trophies for losing. And then we go out into the world and all that stuff is gone and there's nothing there to boost us up. So our self-esteem is the lowest of any generation. I'm like, oh my God. If our self-esteem is the lowest of any generation, why are all the other generations on drugs for depression and self-esteem too? America is got low self-esteem for the most ridiculous reasons.
Yeah.
Then he says the second one is we have no coping mechanism for social pressures and stress because we've been raised on technology and we get dopamine from Facebook. I'm like, really? Facebook's been around for 8 years?
12.
Yeah, 12 years. We can't blame it on Facebook. We can't blame it on that stuff.
Yeah.
We've been getting dopamine hits since you could play Pong on a TV and it would give you a score.
Yeah, I'd get dopamine hits from, that arcade game where you put a coin in and it pushes all the other ones.
Oh man, that thing was awesome.
Oh, come on.
At the fair?
Yeah.
I hope I get a switchblade comb. But to say that we have no coping mechanism just makes us sound like we are addicts, and he does talk about that. His second book actually was very much about dopamine and the other chemical responses of the brain, which was a different experience reading Leaders Eat Last than I got from Start With Why, because it was very much like, well, these things are beyond your control.
Yeah.
It's chemically happening to you. You can't control it.
Yeah.
Then he said we're also a generation that's used to instant gratification. I said there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh my gosh.
He jokingly said that we're the generation that will forego watching a TV show all season long just to be able to binge it in the summer. And I was sitting there and I'm like, you know what, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
I've thought about doing that with a couple shows, but what if I just did that with all my shows? Just stop this week-to-week garbage.
Man, Simon Sinek must have really spoke to you because you're like defending. No,
he always does. I mean, I love his
Yeah,
stuff. Start With Why
Yeah.
is one of the reasons I started my own company. And then he says we also have a hostile work environment because businesses are taking in all of these millennials, but then not doing anything to change them or train them or anything like that. And yeah, to all four of these, I just say, so grow up.
Yeah.
Grow up. I mean... Hadoken!